Good morning, everyone. Our science lesson today is talking about mixtures and compounds. So, what's the difference? Or what does even mixture mean? And what is a compound? We are going to learn together through these slides. So, just looking at the slides over here, a mixture is a combination of things that can be separated. See the trail mix? We can separate out the peanuts, almonds, M&Ms, and raisins if we like. So in other words, a mixture is any subject that has more than one thing in it, and you can actually separate them into different things. So think about a pile of crayon of different colors. You can actually separate the crayons by color. Or a trail mix bowl, you can actually see the candy, the salt, the sugar, the things. You can separate those items. We call this a mixture. A compound is a combination of two or more ingredients that cannot be separated. They are bonded together. We cannot separate the salt into its two ingredients, sodium and chloride. So there are some things, some substances or materials that are made of more than one thing, but you cannot see it, thus you cannot separate it. Take the salt, for example. Salt is made out of two ingredients, sodium and chloride. When you look at it, it looks like one thing, one white thing. You cannot actually go and separate those two. You need a microscope in order to do that, and this is called a compound. So anything that is made out of more than one item, but you cannot actually separate it, is called a compound. These are some examples of common mixtures. For example, a bowl of candy. Look at all these different colored candies that you can actually go ahead and sort them. Look at this sandwich. It has a lot of things in it. The lettuce, the pickles, the mayo, the cheese, and the ham and the buns. This is a mixture of items. The oil and water, you can separate it. There will be oil on the top and water on the bottom. A box of toys, you can separate all these toys, or a box of Legos. All of these things that you can actually see. One big mess of pile of things, and you can actually separate them. We call it a mixture. Can you think of something else? Look around you, look in your room, in your house. What are some examples of mixtures that you can actually see, find, or make together? What are some of your ideas? Now let's take a look at compounds. A compound is a combination of two or more ingredients that cannot be separated. Here are some common compounds in everyday life. Vinegar. Vinegar, for example, is a combination of acid and a flavoring like apples. You cannot actually separate the water, the acid, and the vinegar, but it's made out of two things, so thus it's called a compound. Sugar. It's a combination of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. You can't see those ingredients by your eye. You need a microscope to actually spot them. That's why we call this a compound. Hydrogen peroxide, it combined to form mouthwash. It looks just like a blue liquid, but in it there are so many materials actually that you cannot separate. Water, for example, is a combination of hydrogen and oxygen. Water just looks like a clear liquid, but it's made out of many nutrients and many substances that you cannot separate. Thus, water is a compound. Here are some other examples of other common compounds we use in everyday life. Toothpaste, soap, nail polish remover, baking powder, salt, and aspirin. All of these materials might appear as one thing, but you can actually separate them if looking with a microscope, not with your own eyes. We cannot separate them by hand, so these are all called a compound. Now show me what you learned from this Google presentation, you are going to take a little quiz on a Google form. Remember, if you cannot separate it or sort it out, that means it's a mixture. If you can separate it or sort it out, this is a mixture. If you cannot separate the parts, then it's called a compound. Go ahead and let's do the Google form. Click on the next Google form, read the questions, look at the pictures, and pick if this is a compound or a mixture.